this breaking report here up top?
Oh, the stuff in red?
Yeah.
That's just my little intro. I've been doing that lately with small stories like that happen right before the show. I'll just go into it and say, all right, Facebook is shutting down its paper news reading app on July 29th. Here are the rest of the top stories, and then I'll hit the
Gotcha.
sting.
Okay. I do have a one sentence hot take on that.
Cool. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. I'll say here are the rest of the top stories, and then play the sting, and then give you the reaction.
Yeah.
Window. Sausage being made. Video.
Oh, yeah.
All right. You ready?
Yep.
This is the Daily Tech News for Thursday, June 30th, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Justin Robert Young. You're Justin Robert Young, not only here on Thursday, you're coming back tomorrow, too?
Man, we're going back to back. Like a Lethal Weapon post.
Back to back. Well, just back to back. But yeah, man, it's been a fun week in technology. We're going to talk a little bit about a story Recode did about one of the alternatives Austinites are using in the wake of Uber and Lyft leaving the city. We're going to bring in a couple of our Austinite friends to get their reactions as well.
Indeed.
But first, Facebook is shutting down its paper news reading app on July 29th. Here are the rest of the top stories. Are you going to miss paper, Justin?
Glad to see that magazines no longer have a past, barely have a present, and officially now don't have a future when things like paper are shutting down.
And then the paper app that was in a fight over the name with Facebook, the drawing app, can rest easy. The official Android account tweeted today, and I guess they Snapchatted too, although I missed that, that the official name of Android N will be Nougat. The final release was coming sometime during Q3, and they say by the end of the summer we'll get it.
Would have been a really good idea for them to just announce the name Nougat and not hold a contest for who can come up with the best N-words.
Right? Especially because pretty much everyone said, well, the best one is Nutella. And they still decided to go with Nougat, which Lauren Good at Recode called it, by the way. I think her cat is named Nougat, so that's why she was very excited about this. So not a bad choice, but yeah, I agree with you, man. Just make the choice.
Just make the call, right? There's no need to do it, especially with something as super weird as that. Anytime that your product is anywhere associated with, please name an N-word. You should exit the building as fast as you can.
Yes, but now, no more Android N. It's Android Nougat.
Yes. Recode reports Spotify General Counsel Horatio Gutierrez sent a letter to Apple General Counsel Bruce Sewell on May 26, accusing Apple of, quote, causing grave harm, unquote, by blocking an update to the Spotify app. The letter says Apple turned down the update for business model rules regarding Apple's requirement that apps use Apple's billing system to acquire new customers. Apple takes 30% of in-app subscriptions and prevents companies from promoting alternative ways of subscribing within the iOS app itself. The letter says that the denial, quote, raises serious concerns under both U.S. and EU competition law.
Oh, waving around the legal threats, are we, Spotify? Yeah, so if you're not aware, like there's tons of companies like Amazon that just don't provide a way for you to subscribe. It's one of my greatest complaints about Comixology, which is owned by Amazon, is that when I use it on iOS, I can't just go buy a comic book. I have to go to the web and buy it and then sync it. The other way was what Spotify was doing, which they were saying, well, it's $9.99 a month unless you subscribe to the iOS app where they take 30%, then it's $13.99 a month. But recently, they promoted a subscribe to Spotify on our website and get the first 3 months for 99 cents a month, and Apple made them stop. Yeah. Then they stopped the ability to get a subscription through the iOS app, and now they're coming after Apple.
So this is Spotify fighting this very single front war by bringing up the larger issues that are kind of commonly held with the App Store. They're going to beat them about the brow and shoulders with you're not updating things. Your terms are onerous. you are being harmful and protectionist. Now, there are validities to all these issues, and some of which Apple has addressed by making the process of approval slightly less opaque and certainly by the numbers faster than it had been previously. However, this is, make no mistake, this is Spotify in a competition with Apple Music and Apple in a competition with Spotify. And now, because they are, Spotify has chosen a very advantageous battlefield to go back and forth with. And there's a reason why we are reading about this, and this isn't just an internal back and forth. Spotify wants this to be public because they want Apple to be viewed, rightly or wrongly, you can read this story and decide for yourself, as protectionist and trying to stomp out a leader in the field so they can create their own competition.
And honestly, I can't believe this is the first company that has gotten this up in arms about it. Nobody likes the system where Apple says, nope, you've got to give us 30%. They did change it so that after the first year it drops. I think it's down to 10%, but it is still a quite a big amount to swallow if you're a big company that could get a better deal if it weren't for Apple's inflexible position. So I think what Spotify is doing here has nothing to do with the app approval process. I think Spotify very purposely put something in their app that they knew Apple wouldn't approve so that they can go, look at this reasonable thing we want to do. They're anti-competitive because they have their own music streaming service. They're trying to take our money and keep all of their money, and that is anti-competitive. Whether they'll actually follow through with an actual lawsuit, I somewhat doubt. Spotify doesn't have nearly the pockets Apple does, and Apple has showed it will fight legal precedent to the end. But maybe they can convince some legislators on one side of the ocean or another to start looking into this and cause Apple some trouble from that direction.
Yeah, this is them using the press to make a gigantic stink and shape things where they want.
Yeah. And frankly, I think they and Amazon and Netflix and everybody who does subscriptions have a point. And Apple, perhaps because they are so inflexible in saying like, no, this is just the way it works, it has finally forced somebody's hand there.
Okay, but honestly, Tom, this is one of those things where everybody wants Spotify wants you to put on your green T-shirt and start throwing things at Cupertino, right? They are here for the flame war because this exact conversation.
They want you to discover weekly how Apple is screwing them.
Exactly. This is a very boring businessy conversation that, by and large, most listeners to this show and just users at large won't really care about. If all of a sudden this was fixed in a compromise where Apple says, yeah, you want to know what? We're going to knock it down to, for the first 3 months, 25%, and then it will, year over year, based on traffic and aggregate, we will have these decisions that everybody was happy with, like Amazon has. Listen, you have to pay the troll toll to get into the Amazon marketplace. There's a reason why they are taking that pound of flesh out from anybody who sells anything within their store because they've built a beautiful walled garden. Apple will continue to do the same thing. The actual percentage on that may vary. Apple may back down. Nobody cares about that. In fact, everybody who's listening is probably already asleep.
No, all I care as a consumer is I want to be able to just shop in the app. I don't care who's at fault. Let me freaking shop in my apps. Why can't I buy a freaking Kindle book in my Kindle app? Because I can on my Android. Why can't I do that on iOS? Also, happy 1 year anniversary, Apple Music. Launched today, a year ago. The Trans-Pacific Internet cable called Faster goes live today, Thursday. The cable stretches more than 9,000 kilometers connecting Oregon to Chiba and Mie prefectures in Japan with a top speed of 60 terabits per second. Remember, it's backhaul. It's not going to bring that to your door. It needs to be that fast. A consortium including Google, Global Transit, China Telecom Global, Singtel, China Mobile International, and KDDI funded the project with construction and technical assistance from NEC. And of course, this brings that service inland beyond just the landing points and is allowing a lot more connections to happen on both sides of the cable.
Very much looking forward to new pipelines, stronger, harder, and better. What do you think this like? What is the actual impact of this going live? Like will end users see any difference or?
Well, I know that the end user will likely not see a whole lot of difference. It brings more capacity, which means that more hookups can happen. It means that if you're streaming something from Japan, it's not going to be as laggy. So maybe your I don't know, your anime, or if you're trying to connect to a Japanese server for some reason, that's going to help. It's a bigger business deal for places like Google, who are trying to have a hand in owning more of the infrastructure so they can make sure that they have the tools in their negotiating belt for not only Google, the website, but Google Fiber as well. And because they can get some transit money out of this, one would think.
You know, tech companies come and go. Infrastructure companies last forever.
Absolutely. No doubts.
Microsoft announced that the 1 terabyte version of the Surface Pro 4 and Surface Book, previously available only in Canada and the US, are coming to 10 new markets: Australia, Austria, China, France, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Switzerland, and the UK can get them now. Germany and Japan will have them later this month. Belgium, Ireland, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands only get the Surface Pro 4 later this summer.
And people in those markets are excited to get these terabyte versions. These are the more powerful versions. They're also the more expensive versions as well. Samsung announced that the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge will now be available unlocked in the United States. Previously, the devices could only be purchased locked to a carrier, with the exception of certain phones at Samsung Experience stores in Canada, which U.S. people would have to go buy and then make a run for the border with. The S7 and S7 Edge are available at various online retailers today for $669.99 or $769.99, respectively.
So you want to know what here? I'm gonna pair a little mini discussion with this next story here. Earlier this week, Sony launched its PlayStation Vue TV service on the Roku, and Thursday it went live on Android. Users of the service on the PlayStation get a new feature that keeps video playing in the window in the upper right-hand corner while scrolling through viewing options. The Fire TV version of the PS Vue now supports 60 FPS video, and quick navigation overlay already used in the PS4 now comes to the PS3 and Fire TV users as well. Both of these stories, nothing new, continuing trends, but we begin to see, speaking of infrastructure companies, hardware manufacturers and content providers, or in this case, in PlayStation's case, content aggregators, subscription bundlers, continuing to subvert the once unthinkable power of infrastructure, of Comcast, of AT&T. Now, you know, I don't think 10 years ago you would necessarily see a manufacturer with Samsung that sells a ton of phones in connection with AT&T and Verizon here in the United States say, hey, look, we have unlocked phones. We're going to sell you an unlocked phone, one of our flagship big, gigantic phones. Now it's a better deal for them to have a direct relationship with the consumer, and then let the consumer decide where they're going to plug in infrastructure-wise.
Yeah, I feel like it's less obvious in the Samsung story because more companies have been selling unlocked versions even from launch, and Samsung didn't do it with the Galaxy at launch. Apple usually doesn't do it at launch with their iPhone. They usually wait a month or so before the unlocked versions. But you're right, it's become the norm to say, like, hey, where are those unlocked versions at? And people get very excited about them. PlayStation Vue, on the other hand, coming to Roku is an even bigger deal because it's a service that when it launched, everybody was talking about, well, this must just be to sell more PlayStations, right? They're going to have this TV service, but how many people are going to do that? And Sony, for whatever reason, has either decided, or maybe they planned it all along, to say, no, we're going to roll it out to as many platforms as possible. I can tell you, Justin, this is not a pretty interface on the Roku. One of the selling points of the PlayStation Vue on the PlayStation is it's pretty gorgeous. On the Roku, it is bare bones, but it has everything, and it's designed around what do you want to watch, not what television shows are on what networks right now. In fact, if you want to find the channel listings, it's actually buried like 2 levels down in a menu. So Sony, I think, has become the leader now. There was other news today that Sling added NBC channels as well, but I think that I really do think that this is a power play for Sony to say maybe we have our own service here. Forget the PlayStation. That's something that we can sell on its own.
Well, by the way, do not bury the fact that this is now a Sling and Microsoft available on the Roku. We now have very mature, competing, not going anywhere services that are here on one platform. You have consumer choice. Tom, finally, we have broken the yoke of these bundling cable companies milking us for all that we're worth so we can finally have a package of channels on a box. Rejoice. Rejoice.
Here's the thing. That is perfectly accurate. That's perfectly fine to say. But the big advantage to both of these packages is Sling and PlayStation View I can get no matter where I live in the United States, unlike Comcast, Time Warner, etc. You know, we're going to bring Brian Brushwood into the conversation to talk about Uber and Lyft in Austin because that's where he lives, but he showed up already here, and I can't help but wanting to get my co-host from Cord Killer's opinion on this PlayStation View news as well.
It's a weird moment to stumble into what I thought was DTNS, but suddenly we're live on an episode of Cord Killers. I got to agree with Justin. If what we're doing is consolidating all back to having everything be in that one box, weirdly, I don't even care. As long as that one box doesn't require me to memorize channel codes like IP addresses and instead treats me like a civilized human being who could just search through a menu for the things that I want.
I think, and that's a really good point, Brian, because it really highlights the fact that maybe the bundling wasn't really what we were upset about after all, right? Like maybe the bundling was a good idea. Maybe it's just the fact that the UI on all cable boxes has been straight garbage for a solid 2 decades. Maybe it's just the fact that you have these excruciating horror stories that require, like, you know, proposed legislation in California about canceling your service. Maybe it's the constant trying to shove down other antiquated technology into random bundles like security, like home security or home phone or something. Maybe it's all that we were really annoyed about. Maybe this whole, like, hey, a bunch of channels for a reasonable price. I don't know. Maybe that was fine.
And now that Sling has NBC and PlayStation View is on the Roku, there are fewer and fewer differences between these. The advantage to Sling was always it's on more platforms. It's only on like 1 or 2 more platforms now than PlayStation. And the advantage to PlayStation is you pay and you get everything. Whereas with Sling, they now have this weird package deal where, like, well, one package has ESPN and ABC, and the other package has Fox and NBC. And if you buy both packages, we'll give you a little discount. And it's confusing.
I will say this: big heads up to any professional wrestling fans, as I am. USA now on both packages added to Sling.
Dude, that is not just for pro wrestling fans. That's for Mr. Robot fans who were this close to signing up for PlayStation View, but guess what? Suddenly they're perfectly happy with their Sling TV subscription.
Finally, Google Maps for Android has added the ability to do multi-stop directions. After you add your first destination, you can tap the corner menu and choose Add a Stop. You can also change the order of the stops by tapping and holding the 3-dot menu to the left of a field. Feature is coming soon to iOS. It is something you could do on the web before, and it's something I'm pretty sure I've done it in Waze, so it's not the first mapping app to do it. But a lot of people just rely on Google Maps, and Android is the dominant platform, so this is a big deal for a lot of people.
All right, you guys ready for a real flaming hot take?
I'm ready. I got my flame retardant suit coat on.
All map apps need a gigantic UI overhaul. Like they are not designed for. I've constantly, and I've used used to travel for a living. Used to live on Google Maps. There's so much that is either me trying to futz with this thing while I should be driving when I should be focusing on something else. The idea that you can add a stop, while great for all the anal retentive chefs out there who know exactly which gas station they're going to stop at on their way to on a 4-hour drive. For the rest of us, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you would want an easier way to just say, oh, I need gas. Where's the best place for me to get gas?
There's a fantastic app that does that called Road Ahead, and unfortunately I discovered it in the sunsetting years of my touring, but basically it takes your route wherever you are, whatever highway you're on, and it says, this is what's available, and it's all bright, big icons that you can see while you're driving. Like, these are the food places, these are the gas places, this is how far off the highway they are for this exit, next exit, the exit after that.
Yeah.
So you just kind of shift ahead a little bit.
You know, the only problem is, and it's so funny because I always remember it when I'm in Austin, and specifically when I've been driving from Austin to Houston.
Yes!
And for whatever reason, the main highway you need to go on that Road Ahead doesn't list. You know, and this is Yeah, because they are highway dependent. They're not universal. Like, so they have mapped out like highway by highway, but if your highway isn't on there, it's of no use to you. Google Maps, Waze, all these companies that have been mapping all of this stuff forever need to be better at this. And while I think this is a good idea, having lived in these apps, I think that there is gigantic room for a huge overhaul.
I can't argue with you. I mean, Waze does some of what you're talking about with the gas stations and food things showing up, but it's inconsistent, and their sponsors obviously get way better visibility than the other things. So yeah, I hate to say it, but I agree. Fix your stuff, mapping apps.
That doesn't make for good radio,
no,
Tom.
No, it doesn't. We need more controversial topics. Actually, we don't. You guys submit plenty of controversial topics, sometimes very, very questionably sourced, but they're always fun to look at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Get in there. T-Glass 1976, Coolant SV, Strike It Rich 1, Steve I.O., another J. Martin, and more are helping us make the show better by submitting stories and voting on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. And that is a look at the headlines. All right, I've already introduced him, but Brian Brushwood, Austin resident, host of Scam School for Discovery and Hacking the System for Nat Geo, and Cord Killers on the Diamond Group, is here to chat with us about living in Austin. Of course, Bryce Castillo with you as well, your producer, who also has to get around Austin.
Yeah, so let me ask you real quick, Bryce. Have you been profoundly affected by the Uber Lyft exodus? Because I know that for me, obviously I'm in a position where my wife would much rather I spent the extra $20, $40 in order to go home or go downtown safely and come back. But being a single person living, you live closer to downtown, right?
Yeah, I'm about 15 minutes away.
How much did you use it? How much were you affected by it?
I really started using Lyft a lot right before they went away, and so there was a brief period of a couple of weeks after they left where I was like, well, I wanted to go out, but I don't know about these new apps, and so I'm a little hesitant, and it definitely like swayed my my usage. But then a few weeks ago, I did use one of them. I used Fasten, which is one of the bigger alternatives here, and it was a pretty good experience. My one downside is I was trying to get home from the bar, and it made me log in again, but I definitely forgot my password, and so
after the bar,
not in a condition to remember it.
Right. I was hammered, and I'm like, okay, I gotta send a recovery email.
All right, we've got a solution for you that might work better than this. Before we get to that, though, just real quick, for those who don't realize, in May, Austin voters voted against a proposition that would have exempted ride-hailing services from requirements to use the city's fingerprint background check. Uber does require all drivers to undergo federal and county background checks, but not fingerprint background checks, and not the system that the city of Austin wanted them to use. So Uber and Lyft stopped operations in Austin. Other services like Fasten have started to operate, and they are cooperating and doing the background checks. But Recode reported on another alternative today, and I want to hear what you guys think of this. It's a valet parking service called Lux. Now, it mostly does commuter stuff. Like, you drive in, you schedule a drop-off, you hand the keys, they go park it in their secure garage. Then when it's time for you to leave, you give them like a 15-minute heads up. They bring the car to you. They have a service available in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Austin called Drive Home that they launched 6 months ago. And a lot of people are starting to use this instead of Uber and Lyft when they go out to the bars like you did, Bryce. You drive your car in, you have Lux park it for you, and then when you leave the bar, you set up for them to not only bring you your car, but drive you home. And then I guess the Lux driver just kind of has to find their own way home from wherever you live. But they just charge you an extra rate based on the number of miles they have to drive you.
So there's one of the things, when I heard this story, I looked into Lux. I've already downloaded the app. I'll give it a try sometime over the next week. I'll tell you guys what my experience is. But my favorite thing that I read about the mission statement for Lux is that we don't want to be a parking app. We pick up your car, it disappears into a black hole. It doesn't matter where it is, and all you know is that when you get it back, it's cleaner than it was when you dropped it off. The oil's been changed, transmission fluid,
well,
or whatever.
They charge extra for that stuff, but you're right. You can have that done.
But again, like from a perfect vision of what this is going to be. Unfortunately, I'm really of two minds of this, Tom. On the one hand, this is what happens when you when you try to yank something out of a market of willing buyers and willing sellers. You get a bunch of weaselly stuff. Something fills the void. The whole reason that Uber and Lyft exploded was because they essentially, let's face it, provided cab service, but they didn't call it cab service. They said, we're a rideshare app. We don't need to have those regulations. So they heaped on a bunch of regulations to those, and now they chased them out of town. And it's a big battle of egos. I'm not really concerned either way. But now we have Lux doing the same thing, saying, we'll get you from point A to point B, but we're not a cab app, and we're certainly not a ride-sharing app. We're a valet parking service that just happens to drive you 15 miles out to your house for a fee of $25 plus $3 per mile to get out there, which is the big bummer, is because on the one hand, I'm doing the calculus, and it's like to Uber in and then Uber home, I'm looking at $40 or $50 for the evening. But to do just this, if I drive myself in, drop my car off, and then have them drive me back, I'm looking at $25 plus $3 per mile. That's easily an extra $80 on top of the actual parking price.
Because that's also factoring in how long you're going to be down there. If you head downtown for a real day of drinking, starting at like 2 p.m. and ending at 2 in the morning, like that is a hefty fee for you. All right, are you guys ready for?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I feel like the only responsible journalism is for you and I to investigate this firsthand.
Listen. I will be willing to go forth and find this out, and we will be happy to charge it to Daily Tech News Show because we are doing journalism. All right. Speaking of journalism, are you guys ready for Justin's cranky pants journalism rant about
what's wrong with this system? Other than they had to do it, but there's nothing wrong with Lux saying, "Well, there's no Uber and Lyft, so let's make this happen."
Okay. Number one, we put a pin in that for 2 seconds. This story bothers me because it's a press release for a service that we have no idea how much it's being used or not used. They quote in here that it's being used 120% more than it was before. That could be
140% actually. But
I'm sorry. So that means it could be used 5 times instead of the previous 3. We have no idea. Any kind of percentage stuff like that, especially over 100%, when you have no idea what the baseline is effectively useless. And this story does not ask them what I think Brian is hinting at and what you just brought up. This is the only question you need to ask when it comes to this kind of service. Because, again, they are saying they are exempt from all the laws that the city of Austin was going to heap on Uber and Lyft, for which, by the way, Uber and Lyft still operates in the satellite suburbs of Austin. So Brian, for example, who lives just on the edge of things, can get a ride into Austin. He cannot get a ride out of Austin. They are saying we are exempt from this because we are a valet parking service. The only question that they needed to ask Lux is if all of a sudden the eye of Sauron that is city legislation now turns to you, dear Lux, and they say, no. You need to have this fingerprint ID system as well. Are you going to do it, and will that affect, if the answer is yes, will that affect your pricing? That's the only question, because what we have here in Austin is a very interesting situation where we are seeing what transportation in the city looks like in a tech-savvy, young city, growing city, that does not include Uber and Lyft, which is a fascinating question. But I don't know exactly how many really hard answers we're going to take out of this if we're not going to understand that eventually the city's going to come for all these things and say either we're going to take down this specific hurdle you have to clear, or everybody who is driving a car, whether it's yours or somebody else's, needs to go buy it.
Let me tell you why you're wrong, and then let Brian decide which of us is right.
Okay.
Because he's the one that actually has to live this. I think you're wrong because, first of all, Lux has a very valid defense for not having to get the background checks, which is that they go through rigorous interviews and a training process. They only accept 5% of applicants because they're having to deal with insurance on valet services, which are quite restrictive, and insurance on garage services, which I imagine are also have their own concerns. And they're driving your car. They're not driving their car, and that's a big difference. And I don't think it will matter because it's been since what, May? Since Uber and Lyft pulled out? How long will Uber and Lyft finally play this game of chicken until they blink? Or someone like Fasten finally has done it long enough to gain a little bit of word of mouth and fill the gap of people like, I don't want to even drive my car. I don't want to wait 15 minutes for a valet. I just want to take a car. I don't care if it's Uber, Lyft, Fasten, Cowboy, Texas Showdown Transit. I don't care what it is. Somebody is going to fill that gap because they're saying, well, you know what? I'm willing to do the fingerprint background check because there is no one else to compete with.
Yes. First of all, if you're interested in this story, if you think it's awfully unusual that Austin, one of the most tech-savvy capitals in the United States, would do such a thing, I highly, highly recommend Ryan Holiday's fantastic article. Just look up Ryan Holiday, Uber, Lyft, and maybe Austin Ego in there. You'll find out how it was really just a giant game of chicken that broke bad. I think both you guys are right, of course, for different reasons. Tom nails it right on the head when he explains that as long as there's willing buyers and willing sellers, there will form a market to match the two. I don't know whether it will be a legitimate, quote-unquote, service like Fasten or an illegitimate service like the way a lot of people are using these so-called illegal Facebook groups in order to get from point A to point B. I do know that that this Lux thing feels like it is poorly priced to really fill the void. I have no doubt, number one, Justin, that you're 100% right. I have no doubt this is a press release disguised as a news story. Number two, I have no doubt that many people will use it and it will make sense for them. But I got to tell you, man, this doubles. This is more than, just at a rough estimate, this is more than twice the expense of me taking a Lyft downtown and then taking a Lyft back. It would be twice as much just to get that. And what I'm really, and I hesitate to use this phrase, looking forward to, what I really am curious to see is what this does to the DUI arrests in the Capitol. But I'll tell you this much: people are going to drink, people are going to go downtown, people are going to try to get back by whatever means makes sense. And I'm glad to see more people making an attempt to fill that hole, but I'm not so thrilled that it's a stupidly expensive, extra Weasley way to make something legitimate.
Well, I mean, like, I guess my point is that I don't think it's Weasley. I just think that, Uber and Lyft made these exact same arguments. They also said that they went through gigantic, rigorous processes to hire who they hired. They also said that they turned away more people than they wound up letting run their service. This is not new, and the city wound up coming for them anyway. The larger question here, and I think that it's a matter of time before these restrictions wind up getting relaxed, because the problem will be the same for all of them as they are for Uber and Lyft. Right now, as I understand it, Uber makes a very slim amount of money for every transaction. Lyft loses money for every transaction. I don't know what Lux is. They seem to be, they're called Lux, right?
Yeah, right.
That this is supposed to be a luxury service. So they are charging a premium and probably are coming out ahead on some level for this, despite the fact that I'm sure it's absolutely true that they have to go through a lot of regulatory processes already just to run. However, either the city will say, we're going to make it hospitable for you guys to run your businesses here, or they will say not, and you're going to continue to either get more expensive services like we have now, or like Brian pointed out, you have these Facebook groups that are essentially age, sex, location. Where can I pick you up?
Brian and Bryce, we know you guys are right in the middle of shooting something else, so we really appreciate you taking the time to jump in here and talk to us about this. Anything to let folks know about before we go?
Absolutely not. Bye.
You can find more Brian Brushwood at shwood.com or something like that. I don't know. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. Our pick of the day comes from Chris in Irvine, who says, if you rarely or never use your cameras and want an erratically pleasing solution, try out Light Dims Blackout Edition from lightdims.com. They're $8 on Amazon for a pack. He says, I use these little black stickers for their intended purpose of covering LEDs on electronics in my bedroom, where I like it very dark to sleep, but they also work great to cover your camera, and no one will even notice you're being paranoid.
Hey, all right.
Yeah.
If you want to take that extra precaution, but don't want to look like somebody who gets a John Birch Society mailer, here we have lightdims.com.
Send your picks to us, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. A few emails to get to real quickly. Alex Erickson asks the question, what do you think about the possibility of buying one of the Moto G phones from Amazon at the advertising discount, where they put advertisements on your lock screen, and then flashing the ROM? Do you think Amazon has found a way to set up the phone to not allow changes? It's a good question. And I'm sure Amazon has taken what measures they could think of to stop you from doing that. But if history is any guide, Justin, someone will find a way around it.
I am almost positive it will violate your terms of service.
Yeah, that's pretty much the bottom line there. So that's between you and your god of terms of service.
Shame, 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 mister.
Shame. Yeah, be careful when you start telling shame to somebody. It may turn around on you later on. Mark from Overcast, Colorado Springs was listening to our conversation, actually our post-show conversation, about the radios and transistor radios we used to use after our conversation with Tamara on yesterday's show, and said, this reminded me of my late nights listening to the radio with my pillow speaker. Too bad the 9-volt batteries were so expensive. Probably bought the radio multiple times over in battery costs, but it was one of those little flat speakers you could put under the pillow and have the radio on while you fell asleep. So you wouldn't bother anyone else in the room, but you'd be able to hear it right through the pillow. Bill Burlingame said, in 1948, as near as I can remember, my parents gave me a portable radio, either for Christmas or my birthday, but it was not transistor-based, but vacuum tube based and manufactured by GE. So it must have been kind of pricey. And then Mike said, I had one of the early $50 transistor radio models. It was my one Christmas gift because $50 was a lot back then. I also was born with a hearing loss, so I wore one of those pocket hearing aids with the long cord, and people often asked me if I was listening to the radio, and I would say no. I actually am not at this time.
I think he should have just given fake sports scores at that. Like he should, yep, the Angels are up 3-1. It's who? The Steelers.
The Houston Colt 45s are. So thank you, folks. Keep your emails coming. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Thank you, Justin Robert Young. We'll have you back tomorrow, but anything to tell people about before then?
Yeah, you want to know what? Speaking of sports, so out of left field, totally free. For those of you who are a fan of either hockey or rap music or the Pittsburgh Penguins specifically, this is so weird. In 2009, my brother and I, who are both huge Pittsburgh Penguins fans, made a parody rap song to celebrate the Pittsburgh Penguins, our favorite team, winning the Stanley Cup. It wound up getting played on a lot of the local Pittsburgh radio stations. It was a parody of the Lonely Island song, I Won the Cup. Or, sorry, I'm on a Boat. It was called I Won the Cup. This year, the Penguins won the Cup again. So we again have made a parody rap song. Head over to my Twitter or SoundCloud. Twitter, both are Justin R. Young. Twitter.com/Justin R. Young or SoundCloud.com/Justin R. Young. And you can find me and my little brother Eric rapping to our brand new 2016 edition of I Just Won the Cup. Different song, a different parody of a different song. It makes me irrationally happy to have made it. If anybody is a Pittsburgh Penguins sports fan, can tolerate a little cursing, then please head on over there and check it out. I think it's always a delight to work with my brother, and it was fun to do.
It's a Penguins Stanley Cup winning tradition now.
It is.
Every time it happens, you'll have to do a rap song with your brother.
I know. Too bad we were both like 9 and 6 when they won their cups in 91 and 92. So
yeah. Well, retroactively, maybe you can figure it out.
We should make some FC Hammer parody.
Yeah. Hey, thanks everybody for supporting the show. We couldn't do it without you, literally. You're the only funding we get. DailyTechNewsShow.com/support is the place to go for that. If you're willing to support the show on an ongoing basis, Patreon.com/DTNS. And no matter what, even if you don't have $1 to spare, let us know what you think of the show. Take our survey at bit.ly/2016DTNS. That's bit.ly/2016DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. Catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with that guy, Justin Robert Young and Len Peralta, here to illustrate. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Tight.
Tight.
That was a good show.
Yeah, man. Oh, we didn't get. Oh, by the way, if you live in Austin, Car to Go is also another.
Oh crap! I forgot to ask.
That's fine. It's fine.
I was even thinking towards the end, like I'm gonna.
It didn't. Yeah, it didn't. We didn't really. The conversation wound up going to another place. But Car to Go used to be the way to do it from all the pros, the real hard party and pros that I knew that lived in downtown Austin. Not Brian. Brian kind of lives out in the boonies.
Right.
So the idea is these are all over the city. They're these little escape pod, these like Toyota Yaris, if not smaller, little two-seaters, right? You subscribe, but you don't book them like you would
like a zip car or something.
Like a zip car or something. You literally just see on your app where the cars are. You hop in. It's charged by the minute. You park it on the side of the street. You leave it go. And you just walk away. And so
now, what if you park it in a meter without paying for it?
I think they street parking was what they like. You had to park it in some kind of a street place.
So I guess if they get a ticket, they'll know you were the one using it at that time or whatever.
Yeah. So you have to be kind and rewind in terms of the collective parking. But the cool thing was it was fairly inexpensive, especially if you're just going around across town. It was only a 5, 6, 10, 20 minute maybe ride. It was inexpensive, and then you Car to Go there, and you would Uber back.
So you save a little money on the front end because you're Car to Go, but you don't have to worry about getting the car back.
Exactly.
I would have definitely used that if that was available in 1998.
Wouldn't Google's self-driving cars pretty much own this industry, because you just bring up your smartphone, the door unlocks, you get in, drives you there, does whatever.
Yes, but so would a series of drones where you would just hang on like a monkey bar and go as the crow flies.
Ian says Car to Go has agreements with the city to sort out stuff. I assume he's referring to tickets and things.
Titles.
Yes, titles. We need them.
That kind of Lux is just for us.
Nice. I'm a sucker for a Lord reference.
Oh, wow. Breaking news, Sunbun in the chat room. Adnan Syed of serial fame granted new trial due to failure of cross-examining cell phone tower expert.
Sorry, what?
Adnan's getting a new trial.
Oh, the serial person. Got it. Interesting.
All right. Hey, Lux, take me drunk. I'm home again. Do you even lift, bro? Ride sharing the system. Austin as a service. Where can I pick you up? Austinites no longer are Uberites. Driving for a city. Pardon me. I came for DTNS. I stumbled into cord killers.
Or Night Attack.
Night Attack.
Or a Veronica short of a Dragon Con panel.
Designated drunkard.
I kind of want to do that kind of Lexus just for us, but I think it's less clear than what was the other one? Austin as a service.
You want to do Austin as a service?
I don't know. What do you guys like?
Austin as a service makes a little more sense than that kind of Lux is just for us. But that's me.
Mr. Young?
I would say, let me take a look at him. I think that kind of Lux is just for us. Is a little wordy. I kind of like Austin as a service.
All right. Done.
Austin
as a service. Let's service of not letting you get away without fingerprint background checks.
Yeah.
No, I thought we did a good job of steering clear of bothering digging up the corpse of that debate and just getting on with like, okay, look, this is what they did. So
Yeah.
now what? Now what?
It's gonna be an amazing future. I'm sure of it.
The more we talked, the more I realized, like, yeah, Justin's right. This is a great press opportunity for Lux, but they are not the solution. They will not become the thing that sweeps the nation.
Also, I hate valets.
Well, that's the biggest part, right? One of the things I love about Uber is it's usually 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
At least where I'm lucky enough to live in a place where that's true. If all of a sudden it was like, well, you have to tell us when you're coming, because that I don't know if we made that clear, but that is part of the thing with Lux, and you have to tell us 15 minutes before you're ready to leave. I'm like, that's just not as nice as being able to be like wherever I want to be. You have to tell them. I don't know.
I'm sorry. It takes the spontaneity out of traveling, and then you're doing all these. It's not just planning. You're now micro planning.
It is a great service to have. If I don't know. Actually, it's a better service to have somebody should provide that service for you when you didn't know you would need it. Like, that's the problem, is you have to schedule it up front. I can't drive to the bar and then come out of the bar and go, whoa, man, I can't drive.
Exactly.
That's
so. Here's and the argument against your point of like, oh well, a competitor can come in here and establish a market hold is the reason why Lyft and Uber are pulling out is not is number one that they don't want to show precedent that they are that this is something that they will cave to, because you got a lot of other city council members in a lot of other cities who want to be famous and want to be the ones who tagged stuff on to Uber and Lyft. They've very much so many times of Uber's and Lyft's own making had contentious relationship with city regulations. They've relied on the will of the people to demand, if not out and out lobbying, to demand like they did in Austin to disastrous effect, that they bend the regulations to them. But Uber and Lyft's point of view is, you want to know what? If you think you can make money doing this with this regulation, then have at it. Because Lyft isn't making money per transaction. Uber's barely making money per transaction. So their point of view is, you want to know what? You want to light money on fire? Go ahead. Lose $1 per ride, but make it up on volume. Now that you have all this... oxygen to breathe. Whether or not, I think ultimately what's going to happen is that Austin's going to cave. Austin's going to say, hey, look, really all we're here is for safety. We're going to strike a bargain with these companies to say safety first. And it'll be the Austin Safety Initiative. And they'll all sign it and they'll all shake hands and...
Well, yeah, Uber and Lyft will come to the table with some kind of something that says, well, we'll start using this background check thing, which is even stricter than the one. And then that'll give some face saving. And yeah, I think you're probably... I mean,
eventually Uber and Lyft are going to come back. But in the meantime, it is very interesting to see what springs up, because this is not a bad idea.
Well, and that's where I was going, is somebody's going to figure out how to work within the existing rules. And if they do... When and if that happens with Uber and Lyft, suddenly they'll have an easier time, and they will be competitive in a way that Uber and Lyft won't be, because they will have been operating in the city through the whole shebang.
Yeah, I mean, although the higher security threshold means that the barrier to entry is higher, and we have seen in the past, especially when you have entrenched market leaders, that oftentimes the regulations that are created to curtail the market leaders wind up also creating a higher barrier to entry for market disruptors, right? And so that's why we're talking about Lux, because Lux, we're not doing ride sharing, we're doing ride returning. Like, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, but it is different to say, I'm driving your car home for you.
I'm not saying that they're not that they're misrepresenting themselves. I think they're totally representing themselves right. I'm saying that there's a reason why it's coming from outside that field that has this, a regulation that Uber and Lyft are calling onerous, and not from inside. And that's why I would say, if Lux decided, oh wow, actually there's kind of a market here, and we could kind of afford, provided we don't get any new regulations thrown on us, we can afford to make this more competitive, or afford to uncouple our parking service from our ride home service. And
and here's the other thing. The valet restrictions are more rigorous because you're dealing with handling people's cars while they're not there. Yeah. I wonder if Lux is looking at it saying, even if the city of Austin came at us, we'd qualify because we already do X, Y, and Z.
And that's true. But oftentimes this kind of governmental heat does not necessarily come down. Well, here, let me just put it this way. I had a friend of mine that used to work for Chuck Schumer. She was an intern for Chuck Schumer.
All right.
Her job every day.
Senator Charles Schumer.
Senator Charles Schumer, who was famously, the famous idiom about Charles Schumer is the most dangerous place in Washington to be is between Chuck Schumer and a microphone. Chuck Schumer used to, and I'm sure still does, right now, there is somebody who is either wrapped up or is getting ready to cut out headlines from all the major newspapers in New York City and New York State to count up how many were there for Chuck Schumer. At the time, the other senator from New York was Hillary Clinton, and then to compare them to the other person. He would then take those headlines or the other headlines of the day and would fashion his points on top of it. My point is that notoriety oftentimes equals governmental attention. Go ahead and ask DraftKings and FanDuel how they think they would have done if they both hadn't become the two largest sponsors on ESPN in one calendar year, because they had a lot of regulation that was brought on them when they became very, very successful and famous. That's what happened to Uber and Lyft, and if Lux took off, it would happen to Lux too. Now, whether or not those regulations would be successful, that's another story, because as Brian pointed out, the Uber and Lyft thing wound up going down the way it did because there was a real sword fight, the kind of sword fight that doesn't happen with tempered blades between the city,
Valerian steel,
and the companies. So maybe they'd handle it differently, maybe they'd handle it better, maybe by the rules they would have the correct case that they were covered, but that ultimately doesn't mean all that much when that was the exact same argument that Uber and Lyft made beforehand.
Still have Lord running through my head now. Thanks, everybody. That kind of Lux is just for us.
We are different kind of what?
Bus.
Must?
No, I don't. That's not what it is. I just was looking for a transportation rhyme. That kind of ride hailing. I'm going to start saying ride hailing when I talk about these companies because there's very little sharing going on in any way. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening or just not doing either and somehow playing us for no reason. We can appreciate all of it.
We love it. We love it all. Hopefully, email in. You got or go on the Reddit, man. Talk on the Reddit. What we want to do is continue to create an engaging program for which you, the audience, feel that you have a say in.
Keep it up.
Up, up, up.